It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had just come back from my third shift in a row at the pharmacy, and Tuesdays were usually the day I let myself sleep in until 10. But that morning, my body clock betrayed me, and I was awake by 6:42 a.m., just in time to hear the unmistakable sound of tires crunching the gravel outside my window. I didn't get up right away. I was still groggy, the stale smell of antiseptic clinging to my scrubs, even after I had tossed them in the laundry. But then I heard voices, excited, high-pitched ones, and my sister's laugh. Not her fake one, the one she used in Instagram videos, but the shriek she made when she got exactly what she wanted. I pulled back the curtain. There it was. Brand new. Black, glossy, arrogant in its stillness. A Mercedes-Benz C-Class. The kind of car you get when you haven't worked for anything, but your parents want to congratulate you anyway. I sat down on the edge of the bed, not even realizing I'd moved. The world had tilted. 2 weeks earlier, I had emailed Mom and Dad a quote from the hospital, $8,472 after insurance, for a corrective surgery I'd needed for almost a year. Nothing life-threatening, but chronic, painful, and worsening. A degenerative disc condition in my lower back that left me stiff and aching every morning, sometimes unable to stand for more than 30 minutes without sitting. I'd been dealing with it since college, but it had worsened fast. The surgeon said delaying it longer could cause permanent nerve damage. They hadn't responded. When I followed up, Mom texted, "We'll talk about it after taxes are settled. Things are tight this quarter." And yet here they were, surprising Sierra with a luxury car like it was her sweet 16. Except she was 22. She had just graduated with a communications degree and was planning to become a lifestyle influencer full-time. She had fewer followers than I had back pain. From my bedroom window, I watched them swarm her. Dad fumbling with his phone to get the right angle for a video, Mom holding up the keys like they were wedding rings, and Sierra bouncing in her designer sneakers like she had cured cancer. I didn't feel jealous. Not in the classic sense. I didn't want the car. I didn't want the attention. What I felt was something quieter, duller, like watching a tide pull something precious away from you that was never even yours to begin with. I got dressed. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because I knew if I stayed in pajamas I'd break down. In the kitchen, Mom was pouring mimosa mix into flutes. "You're up early," she said, not looking at me. I heard the commotion. She smiled. "Isn't she adorable? We just wanted to surprise her before she starts filming her next series. Image is everything these days." "Where'd the money come from?" She blinked. "Excuse me? The Mercedes. 80 grand, right? I thought things were tight this quarter." Dad walked in just then. He stiffened when he saw my face. "Now's not the time for this, Elena." "No," I said, voice calm. "Now is the perfect time." Mom set the bottle down. "Honey, this is a gift. Sierra's worked hard." "Worked hard doing what, exactly?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could reel them back. Sierra walked in behind me, keys in hand. "What's your problem?" I turned. "Nothing. Just trying to understand how a car gets prioritized over a medical procedure." Dad's jaw clenched. "We've already said we'll revisit your request later." "You didn't say anything. You ignored me." Mom gave me that look, tight-lipped sympathy, the kind that always felt like condescension. "You're so independent, Elena. We figured you'd already figured something out." That did it. "Right," I said. "Because being the independent one means I get to suffer quietly while you hand her trophies for breathing." Sierra laughed. "You've always been dramatic. And you've always been delusional." Dad raised a hand. "Enough. This is Sierra's moment. Don't ruin it." I stared at him, at both of them, and I realized, with an almost eerie calm, that this wasn't just about the car, or the surgery. It was about the story they had always told themselves. That I was the strong one, the one who didn't need anything. That Sierra was the fragile, promising flower who needed constant watering. I left without another word. Back in my room, I curled up with my heating pad and stared at the email from the hospital billing office. My lower back throbbed in pulses. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there wide-eyed thinking, they were never going to help. They never even considered it. And then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I called Grandpa. He picked up on the second ring. "Elena?" His voice was rough but warm, like gravel and honey. "Everything all right?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then I whispered, "Can I come over?" "My name is Elena Rowe. I'm 27 years old, a licensed pharmacist, and I live in a studio apartment above a dry cleaner that smells like burnt starch and lavender detergent on alternating days. I work long shifts, 10-hour blocks at a busy pharmacy downtown, where customers treat me like a vending machine with a white coat. I don't complain. I make enough to survive, just not enough for $8,472. Especially not after my savings got swallowed last year by a failed business I tried to start on the side, an at-home subscription box for autoimmune care. I called it steady. I believed in it. I still do. But belief doesn't cover ad spend or packaging. And when the first 3 investors ghosted and the 4th strung me along for 2 months before pulling out, I was left with debt, unopened inventory, and my lower back buckling from the warehouse hours I picked up to stay afloat. Still, I never asked my parents for help. Not until the surgery. Growing up, I learned early that my parents operated on a reward-based system. Effort wasn't enough, pain wasn't enough. Only achievement, preferably achievement that could be photographed and praised, earned you attention. Sierra got her first modeling contract at 14. It wasn't major, just a catalog for a local department store, but you'd have thought she was walking for Chanel. The photo shoot took place on a Wednesday. I had a regional science fair the same day. I placed first. When I got home, the house was empty. They were still at Sierra's shoot. I microwaved leftover lasagna and ate it in silence, trophy still in my backpack. That was the beginning of the quiet. It didn't always feel like rejection. Sometimes it just felt like being background noise. When I got into pharmacy school, they said, "That's great, honey," and went back to talking about Sierra's Instagram metrics. When I landed my first job, they congratulated me via group text right after posting about Sierra's latest hair brand partnership. At first, I tried harder. I shared updates. I offered to help them with their taxes. I even helped Sierra study for a marketing course she eventually dropped. But every effort felt like sand slipping through a sieve. Eventually, I stopped trying. I became the low-maintenance daughter, the one who didn't need attention, the one who handled her own problems. But the thing is, independence is often misread. People assume it means invulnerability. They forget that strength can coexist with pain, that someone who doesn't scream is still bleeding. That's why when I pulled into Grandpa's driveway that day, I was already crying. Quietly, steadily. I hadn't cried in front of anyone in over a year, but as soon as he opened the door, gray cardigan slippers and that worried look only he ever wore for me, I broke. He didn't ask questions. He just poured me coffee, sat me on the couch, and waited. When I finally told him, it came out haltingly. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. He knew. He listened. And then he said, "Show me the bill." I hesitated. "Elena," he said, his voice low and even, "you've earned the right to ask." I opened my phone, pulled up the hospital's estimate, and handed it to him. He stared at it for a long time, nodding slowly. Then he said something strange. "I always knew it would come to this." I blinked. "What?" He looked me dead in the eye. "I've watched your parents bend the world around Sierra for years. I told myself you didn't need me to step in, but I was wrong." That night, he made tea, grilled cheese sandwiches, and told me stories about how he used to work 2 jobs when my mom was a kid. About how he'd saved every penny he could. "I didn't do it for a rainy day," he said. "I did it in case one of you needed an umbrella." Before I left, he pressed a small object into my hand. It was an old hotel keycard, yellowed at the edges and wrapped in a tiny leather sleeve. "You used to love pretending this was a treasure map," he said with a smile. "You once told me you'd use it to open the door to your own company." I stared at it. It felt warm. "I still believe you will," he added. The next morning, I woke up to a message from an unknown number. "Hi Elena, this is Marcus Y. from Lewis & Y LLP. Your grandfather asked me to reach out. He's made arrangements to cover your upcoming medical procedure. We'll handle all coordination and billing directly with the hospital. Let us know if you need anything else." I read the message 5 times. Then I stared at my ceiling for an hour, letting the guilt and the gratitude braid together in silence. That afternoon I received another message, this time from my father. "Dad, Grandpa just called me. What is this about surgery? Why didn't you ask us first?" I didn't respond. He followed up 5 minutes later. "Dad, this makes us look terrible." And there it was. Not "we're sorry," not "are you okay," just concern about appearances. I turned my phone off. That night I sat at my desk and opened the old study files. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't done trying, and this time, I wouldn't be trying for their approval. This time, I'd build something for myself, with or without them watching. The next few days moved slowly, like my body knew it needed to stretch time until something inside me caught up. I had taken a week off work for the surgery. The hospital scheduled it fast. Thanks to the call Grandpa made, they put me on the earliest cancellation list, and a slot opened within 72 hours. No wait list. No paperwork fights. Just a single intake form and a nurse who smiled when she saw my file already flagged for prepaid full. That alone felt like an unfamiliar luxury. The surgery itself went well. Clean incision, minimal blood loss, 1 overnight stay. A young orthopedic resident came to check on me in the recovery room and said, "You'll walk better than you have in years." I nodded and blinked back something too tender to name. Grandpa was there when I got discharged. He wheeled me out in one of those clunky chairs with the squeaky wheel and made a dry joke about how he'd always wanted to be my chauffeur. He had packed a small overnight bag for me to recover at his place, insisting I take a break from climbing my 3-floor walk-up every day, like some sort of cursed cardio ritual. For 3 days, I rested in his guest room, propped up on pillows, drinking mint tea, reading the same business book 3 times in a row, without retaining a word. I was exhausted, but grateful in a way that wasn't showy, the quiet kind. The kind that hums in the chest and makes you want to do better. On the 4th day, he brought me a newspaper. He slid it onto my bed like it was a secret. "Page A8, he said. I opened it, curious. There it was, a 2-column profile titled "The Pharmacist Who Built a Patient-Centered Startup." My name in bold. My photo, one I'd forgotten I'd sent months ago to a local reporter who'd reached out back when I first tried to launch Steady. I stared at the page. The article detailed how I developed the concept during late-night shifts, how I'd funded the prototype myself, how I pivoted the business model after the initial failure to focus on B2B partnerships with clinics instead of direct consumers. I didn't even know they decided to publish. Grandpa sat down beside me, legs crossed, arms folded. "That was from your old pitch deck, wasn't it?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess they must have held the story." "Do you know what this is?" he asked, tapping the headline. "Embarrassing?" "No." He gave me a look. "Proof, the kind you don't need to shout about, the kind that stays printed even when people pretend they didn't see it." That night, I got a call from Sierra. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I picked up. She didn't waste time. "You really had Grandpa pay for your surgery?" I didn't answer. She continued, "You could have just asked Mom and Dad again." "I did. You know I did." A pause. Then the voice softened slightly, like she wasn't sure what part she was supposed to play anymore. "They didn't think it was serious." I exhaled. "That's the problem, Sierra. They never think anything is serious until it happens to you." She didn't respond, so I added, "But it's done now, I'm healing. That's all that matters." More silence. Then, "Well, just so you know, Dad's furious, says Grandpa made a power move." I almost laughed. "Grandpa didn't make a move, he made a correction." Another pause. "They're planning a dinner this Sunday, everyone's coming, even Aunt Claudia." "Okay." "They want you there." I said nothing. "They want to clear the air." I almost asked whose air, whose conscience. But instead I just said, "I'll think about it." That Sunday I went. Not because I wanted closure, but because I wanted clarity. I wanted to hear them say it out loud. What they had done, what they chose, what they continued to believe. I wore the same sweater I had worn to the hospital, comfortable, nondescript. My hair was still messy from days of resting flat. I didn't dress up for them. When I walked in, the living room was full. Dad, Mom, Sierra, Aunt Claudia, even my cousin Oliver, who usually skipped anything not involving sports or beer. Everyone looked up when I entered. Sierra stood quickly. "You made it." I nodded and took a seat on the edge of the couch. Mom brought in a tray of hors d'oeuvres. She looked tired. So did Dad. Grandpa was already sitting in his chair, his face unreadable. Dad started first. "We wanted to talk about what happened. We feel like some wires got crossed." I let the silence stretch. I didn't want to help him out. He cleared his throat. "We didn't know the surgery was that urgent." "You didn't ask." Mom interjected. "We've always supported you, Elena." I turned to her. "You didn't even respond to my email, but you managed to wire money to a car dealership the same week." Sierra tried again. "Look, I think they were just caught up. Things move fast, you know? I didn't even expect the car." I raised an eyebrow. "But you took it." That stung. She looked away. Dad sighed. "We're not trying to argue. We just wish Grandpa hadn't embarrassed us." I turned slowly to Grandpa. "Did you intend to embarrass them?" He shrugged. "I intended to help my granddaughter get what she needed. The fact that you feel ashamed says more about your choices than mine." No one spoke. Aunt Claudia sipped her wine, clearly enjoying the show. Grandpa looked at me then, softer now. "I'm proud of you." I nodded. "Thank you." Mom said, quietly, "We'd like to be proud of you too, Elena." I stood. "Then maybe you should have started before the article came out." And then I handed Dad a copy of the newspaper. I left it on the coffee table next to the cheese platter. They didn't read the article until after I left. I know because Sierra texted me later that night. "Mom's crying, Dad won't speak, you could have handled that better." And maybe I could have. But I'd spent my entire life handling things better, soothing, softening, deflecting. I was done. Let them read about my resilience in print, instead of hearing about it secondhand through dinner table updates they half listened to. By the next week, things were awkwardly quiet. Mom sent me a picture of our dog in a sweater. Dad sent nothing. Sierra was back to posting videos of unboxings and makeup routines, captioned with "Had blessed" and "Stat family first." Then, on a Friday afternoon, Grandpa called. His voice was low and even. "They want another dinner," he said, "but this time I'm choosing the venue." I raised an eyebrow even though he couldn't see it. "You're going?" "I'm hosting. That Sunday we met at his house. Not the big one he used to live in with Grandma that got sold after her stroke, but the smaller one he downsized to near the lake. It was warm, cozy, full of furniture that actually got used. I got there first. He gave me a small hug, then pulled a manila envelope from the bookshelf and handed it to me. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it after dinner," he said. "I'll cue you." The rest of the family trickled in one by one like wary actors stepping onto a stage they didn't rehearse for. Mom brought a lemon tart, Dad brought silence. Sierra wore designer boots and carried a fake smile. Dinner was fine. Grandpa made his famous roast, and everyone complimented it too much, like that could fill the silence they weren't sure how to break. Halfway through, he cleared his throat and tapped his wine glass. "I'd like to say something." Everyone turned toward him. Even the roast seemed to still. "I've been watching this family twist itself into knots for years," he said. "Over money, over status, over appearances. And I've held my tongue longer than I should have." He turned to me. "Elena had surgery 2 weeks ago, a surgery her own parents couldn't be bothered to fund, but I did, because I believe in her, and because pain, real pain, should never be measured against how likable someone is." Mom blanched. Dad's jaw tensed. Sierra actually looked down. Then Grandpa turned to me again. "Open the envelope." I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled out a single check, made out to me, for $50,000. I blinked. "What is this?" "A second chance at steady," he said. I stared at him, speechless. "I've already spoken to an attorney. The money's yours, no strings. But if you want mentorship, if you want structure, I have contacts, old ones but useful," Mom finally snapped. "You didn't even tell us you were doing this. I didn't think you'd care." "That's not fair," she said, eyes wide with wounded pride. "No," Grandpa said gently. "What's not fair is watching your child struggle and convincing yourself she'll figure it out while you buy luxury cars for the one who posts lipstick tutorials." Sierra stood up. "I'm not just..." He cut her off. "I didn't say that to insult you, Sierra, but sometimes it's important to see the whole picture. Elena's been building things in silence for years. You just never looked up." Dad finally spoke. "So what? You're just gonna bankroll her now? Make us look like failures?" "No," Grandpa said, his voice hardening. "You did that all on your own." It wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was clarifying. Aunt Claudia sipped her wine with the calm of someone who'd seen this coming since the 90s. Mom opened her mouth again, but no words came out. I sat there, check still in my hands, unsure if I was allowed to feel triumphant. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel victorious. I felt seen. After dessert, as coats were being gathered and glasses emptied, Dad stood beside me in the hallway. "You've made your point," he said. I met his eyes. It wasn't about making a point. It was about survival. He looked away. Sierra didn't speak to me. She walked past with tight lips and stiff posture, like I was contagious. Outside, the air was brisk. Grandpa walked me to my car. "I meant every word," he said. "I know," I replied, my voice small. "But why now?" "Because watching you suffer quietly didn't make me proud. Helping you rise does." I drove home in silence, the check tucked into the inside pocket of my coat like a secret I'd finally earned. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop. I pulled out my old steady files, logo drafts, pricing tiers, the original pitch deck that no one read. Then I made a new folder, Steady 2.0. The tagline came first. Chronic care. Human first. That night, I didn't sleep. I built. 3 months later, I walked into a WeWork space downtown and claimed my own desk. It wasn't much, just a monthly hot desk membership, a laptop stand, and a free cup of coffee that tasted like watered-down ambition. But it was mine. After years of cramming dreams into my bedroom corner and moonlighting ideas between shifts, I finally had a place where my thoughts could take up space. Steady 2.0 was live. Not flashy, not viral, but real. I'd pivoted the model entirely. No more boxes filled with turmeric capsules and symptom journals. I built partnerships with 2 local clinics to supply curated, subscription-based care kits for patients managing autoimmune issues. Gluten-free snacks, compression gloves, low-scent soaps. Things I knew mattered because I'd spent hours listening to customers over the pharmacy counter, logging what helped and what didn't. And now those stories were becoming invoices. My first order went to a community health center. 10 kits, $480. I cried when I saw the confirmation email. The next went to a rheumatology practice that wanted monthly deliveries for their waiting room. Then another. Word spread slowly, organically, through doctors, not influencers. I didn't need followers, I needed believers. The day my first investor emailed was the day I finally stopped waiting for my parents' approval. He'd read the article from the paper Grandpa saved. He'd seen my tiny update on LinkedIn. Your pitch was underbaked, but your execution is crisp. Want to talk? We talked. He introduced me to a firm that focused on female founders in overlooked verticals. I reworked my pitch deck, added hard numbers, framed the story not around struggle, but around adaptation. Around proof. 6 weeks later, I signed a term sheet. A $75K pre-seed round. Nothing earth-shattering, but it was mine. The next day, Sierra posted a picture of herself in a matching tracksuit holding a lavender smoothie. The caption read, "When you're the CEO of your own life, boss energy, girl hustle." I scrolled past it. Mom sent me a one-line email that week. "Heard you got some funding? Congratulations." No emojis, no follow-up. I didn't reply. Instead, I bought myself a second-hand espresso machine, stocked my new office shelf with client folders, and hung Ava's old hair tie, the one that had lived in my drawer for years after I tutored her in chemistry, on a pinboard next to my license. A reminder, everything begins with a small, quiet yes. Grandpa stopped by the office a few weeks later. He brought donuts. Sat on the edge of my cheap IKEA chair and surveyed the room like it was a kingdom. "You've made it," he said. "Not yet," I said. He smiled. "You don't have to. That's the difference now." That night, I got a voicemail from Dad. His voice was quiet, too quiet. "Hey, Alina, your mom and I saw the profile on the small business site. We're proud of you. Maybe we didn't always say it the right way, but we are." Then, more silence. "And if you ever want to come by, we'd like to see you." I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back, not because I was bitter, but because something in me had shifted. I no longer needed their applause. I no longer craved being their story. I was writing my own. And slowly, people began to notice. A local reporter featured Steady 2.0 in a health tech newsletter. One of the clinic managers told me patients had started asking where the care kits came from. A chronic illness blogger DM'd me asking if she could review them. These weren't viral wins. These were rooted wins. And the best part? Every check cleared. At Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner at my apartment for the first time. Just Grandpa, my friend Lex from the clinic, and Ava, the teenage girl I used to tutor, now 2 years into her nursing program. I cooked. Not well. But no one complained. I didn't invite my parents. They sent a group text the next day. "Hope you had a good holiday. We missed you." I read it twice. Then I put my phone down and turned back to Lex, who was helping me map out expansion ideas on my coffee table. I still felt sad sometimes. Still caught myself wondering why it took so long to be believed. To be chosen. But then I looked around. At the cheap ceramic mug in my hand, the shelves of products that used to live only in my head, the sound of Grandpa laughing in the next room, and I remembered, they didn't believe in me because they never saw me. Not really. But I saw myself. And that was enough. There's something strange about growing up in a family where your absence is quieter than your presence, where your wins are background noise and your pain is inconvenient. For years, I thought the answer was to try harder, to soften myself, to make their love easier. But I've learned that being unseen isn't always about you. Sometimes people build mirrors around themselves instead of windows, afraid to look out, afraid to acknowledge anything that doesn't reflect who they believe they are. I used to think I had to forgive my parents out loud, that healing required confrontation, that peace meant reunification. But peace, I've learned, is sometimes just quiet. It's sitting in a small office, sipping day-old coffee, watching the sun move across a client contract with your name at the top. It's folding a check, not as a lifeline, but as a stepping stone. It's printing your first branded sticker and peeling it off too fast because you're impatient, but smiling anyway. It's hearing someone say your name in a meeting room and not flinching. I don't know if my parents will ever change. I don't need them to. I have a business. I have a voice. And finally, I have a seat at my own table.